This was once a Tesla interview question, and it's a true story that happened to a businessman. There was a village where people didn't like to eat mangoes. Now, you have a lot of mangoes to sell to them. What would you do? Now, let me tell you how that cunning businessman set the trap. Every day, the merchant would go to the village and shout, "Who has mangoes? I want to buy a large quantity." The merchant deliberately created demand. In business thinking, this is called making something out of nothing. The merchant went to buy mangoes every day. The purchase price was different every day. On the first day, he bought them for 10 yuan. The villagers, not knowing if it was genuine, tried giving him a mango, and the merchant indeed gave them 10 yuan. As a result, the whole village started looking for mangoes. The merchant raised the price by 1 yuan every day, starting from 1 yuan, then 11 yuan, 30 yuan, and finally 14 yuan, increasing by 1 yuan each day. In business thinking, this is called inertia thinking. By the fifth day, the villagers would have developed inertia thinking, and then someone would rush to buy all the 14 yuan mangoes in front of you and plan to sell them to you for 15 yuan the next day, earning a 1 yuan difference. In a market economy, these are the kind of people you want. You must let these people make money, because once someone in the village makes money by reselling mangoes, there will be a bunch of people following suit. In business thinking, this is called casting a brick to attract jade. One day, the merchant had to go back to the city for something. His assistant told the villagers, "I secretly sold all of my boss's mangoes to you at 10 yuan each. When the merchant returns, you can sell them back to him at 15 yuan, and then you will become rich." The villagers went crazy and scraped together enough money to buy all the mangoes back. The assistant took the money and left, and the merchant never returned. The villagers waited for a long, long time, firmly believing that the merchant would return to buy their mangoes for 15 yuan. Finally, someone couldn't wait any longer. "After all, mangoes will spoil if not eaten. I sold them to the shrewd merchant from the neighboring town for 3 yuan. So now he has cheaper chips." Does this story sound familiar to you? That's because it's similar to the stock market we often see. The merchant is the operator, the mangoes are the stocks, the assistant is the insider information, and the villagers are the retail investors. This is why stocks keep rising, and then you naturally get trapped. They manipulate human nature, greed. The second half of the story is another routine. 6 months later, the merchant finally returned, claiming to have been seriously ill and still longing to buy the mangoes for 15 yuan. The villagers sighed at the merchant's promise-keeping, feeling unlucky for themselves. The merchant said, "My mangoes have been stolen. You've been swindled by someone else. We are all victims. How about this? I keep my word, the mangoes are still 15 yuan." At this point, the merchant was not satisfied with just selling mangoes. If you were the merchant and wanted to earn more money, what would you do? You might notice that some villagers really want to buy mangoes but don't have money. So, you propose to lend them money to buy the mangoes. In their habitual thinking, these villagers unanimously believe that the mangoes will continue to rise in price. The result of rising prices is that the villagers mortgage the mangoes in their hands to you, pay back the money, and buy more mangoes. Without having to work hard to sell mangoes, you become the villagers' biggest creditor. Until the villagers repay the loan, the ownership of these mangoes still belongs to you, and you make money on both sides. This is called making hay while the sun shines. As the events unfolded, some villagers realized that mangoes were not essential goods. Living without mangoes was quite possible, and they could also avoid the burden of heavy loans. However, I was concerned that such thinking could be dangerous and might affect the sustainability of my mango business. Therefore, I assigned additional value to mangoes and told the young girls in the village that someone who couldn't afford to buy a mango didn't deserve to have love. Consequently, those who didn't buy mangoes realized that none of their previous honors, educational credentials, scholarships, or any other evidence of excellence could compare to a single mango. Even those who aspired to explore the world or chase their dreams found themselves inferior to men who could afford to pay for mangoes in full. Hence, the clever villagers had no choice but to reluctantly follow the wheel of worldly desires, without daring to entertain any other thoughts about the value and sacred significance of mangoes. After more than a decade, I noticed that the villagers' rate of reproduction couldn't keep up with the speed of mango tree planting and harvesting. Based on the laws of supply and demand, the price of mangoes would eventually decline. The issue was that I had a large number of mangoes which the villagers had mortgaged. For example, those who had taken a loan of 20 yuan to buy mangoes. Once the price of mangoes dropped to 10 yuan, would the villagers continue to repay the loans? Certainly not. So, I came up with another solution. The villagers could mortgage the mangoes to me, borrow money, and call it a mortgage loan. I could then use the money that the villagers owed me as further collateral, known as remortgaging the loan. In this way, I transferred the risk to others and made another successful exit with cash in hand. When the price of mangoes dropped, many villagers who held a large amount of mangoes immediately became anxious and angry. This is because many villagers bought the mangoes at a high price, couldn't repay their loans, and had to auction off the mangoes. Previously sold for 20 yuan, they could now be bought for just over 10 yuan, or even lower. At this point, you entered the market 3 times with funds to buy at the lowest point, playing the distressed asset game. Does this count as profiteering during a crisis? So, you hoarded a large amount of mangoes again, knowing that it's almost impossible to sell them like before. You pleaded for help from the villagers, and the village was also discussing. In the end, after the private equity fund for mango trading was opened not long ago, you quickly packaged your distressed mango assets and sold them to the fund manager for at least double the price, allowing you to cash out for the 3rd time. Do you understand this scene? Are you familiar with it? Yes, this is the operation of capitalists exploiting the common people behind real estate investment. Aren't you clear why banks can continuously receive interest income? Because real estate is the greatest product for banks.